Welcome to the MimeCast. I'm Michael Gene Sullivan, and the MimeCast is a chance for people to get to know those of us at the Mime Troupe, both actors, writers, directors, designers, interns, workshoppers, veterans, and people that are there now. A chance to get to know us in ways that don't just have to do with the Mime Troupe, but kind of like, what is the rest of our lives like? And so today we're very happy to have an ex-workshopper, Gabriella Momah here. How you doing, Gabriella?
Hi, I'm good. How are you, Michael?
Okay, so far so good. Sheltering in place without hopefully driving my wife and son insane.
Right. I feel that.
Always a struggle. That's a struggle all the time for me, and especially now that we're kind of stuck here.
The good old wife and son. I can resonate.
So where are you at right now? You're all sheltered in place. Where are you?
I am in Oakland. I live in the Fruitvale area of Oakland.
Oh, cool.
Birds are chirping pretty loudly this morning. I'm not sure if you can hear it on my. Can you?
No, but that's nice. That's one of the things with, like, people are saying that, because everybody's indoors, the wildlife is kind of springing back out a little bit more.
Yeah, I saw a turkey crossing the street on 14th, like in West Oakland.
I saw a turkey too. I didn't even tell anybody because I was like, a turkey?
Right. I think it's the person I told too. It was just so absurd. I just was like, wow, well, good for you, turkey. I see you. Cross that street, okay?
Yeah. Is there a park nearby?
Yeah, there are a few parks. I've actually been hiking a lot. I have a car, so I'm able to drive to different trails and find the ones that are open. But Diamond Trail is nearby. Leona Park is nearby. Redwood Regional and Joaquin Miller are also super close. So, yeah, super grateful for that, for nature. Yeah.
Well, that's the thing. Like I said, I was just in Golden Gate Park. I was just kind of walking along, and this huge bird comes by, and I was like, I'm pretty sure that's a turkey.
Right.
Bird, little skinny head, big body. And I was like, well, so the reason I asked is just like, that's where they live the rest of the time. They're hiding out, in the parks. But now that people aren't on the streets, they're like, I guess I can go out here now. Weird. It's like
there were a lot of people at Golden Gate. I went there one time and I just didn't return because I felt like there were way too many people and you couldn't really socially distant.
It is really hard. I mean, when I go to the park, I go way down to the West End, because it's wilder down there. There are lonelier paths, there are places I found a spot. I don't talk about it, but I found a spot that's really large, and nobody goes there, and so that's where I can go in the park. I'm not telling you. I'll tell you after this.
Perfect.
But yeah, it's like, this is amazing, and it's beautiful. I took Valina there one time, and she said, this is like walking through a screensaver. Wow. And I was like, yeah. So I'll tell you later. But anyway, let's talk more about you.
Okay.
So, starting from the beginning, so where were you born?
Wow, we're taking it way back. Okay. I was born in Towson, Maryland, which is right next to Baltimore, DMV. Yeah.
Did you grow up there?
No, I didn't actually. I've actually never been back to Towson since I was born, to my knowledge. I grew up for a few years in like Columbia, Maryland, which is I guess still in the Maryland family. And then when I was 4 or 5, me, my mom, and my sister moved to California and lived in LA County, all over LA County. And we kind of bounced around within LA County and kind of landed when I was in high school in Diamond Bar, California.
I have no idea where that is.
Yeah, it's like maybe like 30 minutes from downtown Los Angeles, but it's definitely a suburb of LA. Grew up in the suburbs there. I spent a few summers in Maryland in like middle school and some of elementary school, but for the most part, identify as a Californian because I spent most of my formative years in California.
So your family was in Maryland. Why? Military, working for the government, just being in Maryland? How'd that happen?
Yeah, to take it back a little bit, both of my parents are immigrants and are from Nigeria. So my mom's side of the family is from Lagos State, and my dad's side is from Igbo land. So I'm pretty sure he's from Delta State, but I'm not positive. But my mother is Yoruba and my father is Igbo. And so I feel like a good theatrical metaphor for Yoruba folks, the Igbo folks, are like Montagues and Capulets. Like they are not
Yeah, so
traditional tribes that get along. So being like multi-tribal myself is a pretty unique thing. I only know one other person besides my sister who is multi-tribal. I'm sure they exist, but it's not a common thing, at least in that generation, for that to happen. So my mom moved to the States in the 80s for school. She was a doctor and went to medical school in Nigeria and then did her residency at Howard in Maryland. And then my father is pretty intelligent, like graduated from school back in Nigeria when he was like really young, like maybe 14 or 15, and then went to college again for medical school, and then moved to the US, I think for similar reasons, like medical school type of reasons. And then a family friend introduced them to each other at some point, somewhere in like the East Coast, New England region. And they lived in Florida for a while, had my sister, and then about 18 months later had me in Maryland. So I'm not sure I don't actually know like the whole story, but I think they probably moved back to Maryland for like the community connection and for medical opportunities, because Maryland, DC, Virginia has a pretty strong Nigerian community. I'm not sure about Florida, but I think it was a gravity well for both of them as a place to like raise children and whatnot. But my parents split up when I was pretty young, like 4, maybe 3 or 4. And so when that happened, my mom moved my sister and I out to California. And then my dad stayed in Maryland.
So why do you think she came out to California? I'm talking to different people, and it's like, my parents moved to California, and then I talked to Reggie D. White, and his family moved to California, and we all moved to Southern California.
Right.
And his family for one reason and for job reasons, and my family for job reasons. So did your mother move out here because there was a gig or what?
No, it's actually a pretty interesting story, and I've really wanted to write a story or a play about my mother's like love, or just a love story where my mother is the protagonist and just kind of navigate everything, because her own like love story is very interesting. But prior to meeting my father, she was with a Yoruba man, so someone within her tribe, and then she brought him back to Nigeria. She met him like in Philadelphia, brought him back, was going to marry him, and my grandfather was like, absolutely not, I don't approve. So then she ended things with this man, and then met my father and had my sister and I and all of that, got married and whatnot. But then when things went south between my parents and they split up, she went back to this other love interest that she had, who had since moved to California. And so I remember in the beginning we were kind of going back and forth, like just visiting, California every once in a while, but then eventually we like moved to California. And it was a kind of a challenging time as a child, all of the moving that I encountered growing up. But I think now in hindsight, I'm able to see kind of like the decision making my mother made. Like, so we moved to California so she could be with this man. And then, in terms of choosing like an actual city to settle on, she did her research in terms of like what the best school district was and like what she could afford. Because, I mentioned previously that my mom was a doctor, but I think the assumption there that's made is that, we were really wealthy and that she had access to a bunch of things. And it was really interesting because my mother grew up fairly wealthy in Nigeria, but that didn't automatically translate when she moved here, because being a Black person in America means so many different things. Being an immigrant in America means so many different things. Being in a predominantly white, male, straight field of medicine meant so many different things. So it was really hard for her to actually find work when she was here. So we moved a lot within California to, rented a lot, leases went up, leases got more expensive, so we moved again and changed schools again and all of those things. But throughout the most part, my mom stayed with this man who became my stepdad. But all relationships, as I'm learning on myself on a personal level, can be really challenging, and like having kids and dealing with money and dealing with job insecurity, it makes it even more challenging. But very interesting story, and I would really love to write a play about it, just as a healing experience for me, just to try to understand, what she was navigating. It's been really helpful. She passed away about 7 years ago, and it's been really helpful for me to just like try to understand her perspective, so I can forgive her and myself for the things I experienced as a child. I know she was doing the best she could, and I don't know what it's like to, leave everything that and go to an entirely different country, and the only stability that you would have are like in relationships that are still ephemeral, and like trying to raise children and trying to make it in a field that is really oppressive and difficult, So I have a better understanding for where she was coming from now than I did when I was a kid, for sure, which has been super helpful.
Yeah, it's really hard. People think, in terms of understanding a trailblazer, like it sounds like your mother was, that person, it takes a certain personality type to be a trailblazer. It takes a certain personality type just to be an immigrant. People don't appreciate that when people come to this country, the difficulties that they've had to overcome.
Right.
And even if not like financial necessarily, but just that you're leaving your family, you're leaving the culture that takes so much bravery and so much fortitude to go through all the stuff to get here, and then to have to not assimilate, but to be here and not be bouncing back and forth. And then even inside of that, for your mother, leaving, being comfortable, going to school, having a job, and starting a family on the East Coast, and then being one of those people who comes out to the West Coast.
Yeah.
Each one of those steps.
Each iteration. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like a series of all of these different choices that can be so difficult.
Yeah.
But it also can end up that, like you were saying, you changed schools a lot.
Yeah.
As a kid, I did too. When I went to 6 different elementary schools, because there was only 6 grades.
Right.
But it's because we kept moving.
Right.
In Los Angeles, we moved so many times, and in San Francisco, we moved so many times inside the city. Right. I think each time my parents trying to, find a better neighborhood, find a better school, find something we could afford mainly. Right. So why did you guys move so much?
Yeah, I think all the things you mentioned are definitely reasons why we moved a lot too. Finding better schools. Me and my sister at times experienced bullying, so I feel like that also was a driving force to move schools. Also, like affording different homes. So like we rented for the majority of our upbringing. So like if a lease went up and like the the rent got higher, whatever, jargon, realty jargon. But if like the lease was higher and there was something cheaper, even like down the street, like I remember we moved like once every year, but in different, like within the same neighborhood. My mom would just find like a cheaper place to move, so we would like move there, and like I could literally like walk some things down the street to like the new place that we moved. Wow. That wasn't always the case, but there were at least 3 or 4 times out of the times that I moved were times where like they were within a certain neighborhood. Like when we were in San Dimas, we moved from like Calle Renata to Calle Treyes, and like when we were in Diamond Bar, we moved from like Cresmont Drive to Stardust Drive to Talleyrand Drive. Like I just feel like they were all kind of like within the same neighborhood, and but we also like moved cities, and each time a city move happened, a school move would happen. And then I think also too, sometimes we moved because of just like emotional turbulence within my mother's relationship, with my stepdad. And so there were times when maybe like one of our names was on the lease, or like either her name or his name. And like if fights would happen, and like sometimes that would cause moving. But I don't know, their love story is a very interesting one, because he was there until the end of her life. And as was my father in some ways too, which was very interesting, but in like a different way, just as like, more of we shared children together, and I'm experiencing a terminal illness, and I don't want us to have bad blood with one another. So it was interesting to see them also like have a friendship. Again, part of this play, you know, the life cycle. But yeah, we moved for a lot of different reasons, for sure.
So I was, reading different things about actors, and it so often people that are either in military families, and they have to move a lot, or they just move a lot, like we did. A lot of times those kids end up going into theater because they have to keep making new friends. They have to kind of keep reinventing themselves every place they go.
Right.
So I know for me, it got so bad that I was just like, I would make friends, and in my mind, these were just temporary friends.
Absolutely.
I was like, I'm not going to know you next year, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah.
So what was it like? Did you feel that similarly?
Yeah. I think that I got pretty good at making friends growing up. I was a little bit of a class clown before I even like discovered theater, because theater wasn't something that was offered until maybe middle school. But even then, my mom was like, "I want you to be in band." So I was like, "Okay." And then she was like, "I don't want you playing any like masculine instruments. Like I want you to play something dainty like the flute or clarinet." And I was like, "I'm gonna be a drummer."
I was a drummer too.
Oh yeah, I learned xylophone.
I did percussion for 6 years. Whoops, you've gone away.
Can you see it? You can't?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Oh, cool.
I was just showing you. But yeah, that's actually been really awesome during the quarantine to like have instruments. But yeah, so I got really good at making friends wherever I went, being the new kid. I did have the fortune of at times being able to stay somewhere for a couple of years. So moved a lot within elementary school, and then middle school I stayed at the same school, but then switched for high school, and then high school stayed at the same place. So I feel like I got pretty good at making new friends in elementary school because it was more turbulent, and then I just kind of kept those skills when I got to middle school. But when I was in middle school, I was bullied a lot. So too strange for people, I guess. But I had, there was one friend I had who we were family friends in elementary school and didn't go to the same school. But I think when we got to the same school in middle school, because I moved to her city, I think she felt maybe threatened in some way because I was kind of just like the new person and trying to make friends and all this stuff and like trying to be funny. But I think she just kind of felt like she wanted to be that person, you know, and that there wasn't really two of us. So just kind of switched to bullying me when we were in school, then being cool when we were with family friends and stuff, which was a really interesting dichotomy. But I just kind of learned to embrace my weirdness, and I was like, well, this is fine. Like, if I'm going to be bullied, then I'm at least going to just like have like an inventive imagination and find other weirdos like me. And so I feel like I found a bunch of folks within the music community. So like in band, I got really invested in band and in percussion, and would do like all state and all Southern bands too. So outside of school, and one of my best friends I made through doing that, we're still friends now, and she's still a drummer in LA. And so I made friends that way. And then in 8th grade, I finally was able to add like a second elective to my coursework. So I'm super grateful to have gone to a school that even had that option, or like had music and had band and all of that and had theater. Yeah. And so I was able to still stay in band and also do drama because I had done summer school. And I was able to like, I can't remember what subject I did, but maybe I did like history or something over the summer. So I had an extra space. So I did drama as well. And it was so much fun. I remember my first play ever was this take on Goldilocks and the Three Bears, where Goldilocks was being put on trial. Right. And I played Goldilocks, and it was really funny. And I remember that was just one of the first times someone, like a teacher, had told me, like, wow, you are a natural at this. And like, where have you been hiding? And I'm just really glad that you're in this class. And then I did theater throughout high school as well. And it was just such a beautiful opportunity to be as weird as I wanted, and to also just be able to play. And like every day, you know, at least once a day within a class, I would have the opportunity to just create and exist without fear of being bullied, without fear of being made fun of. Like it was a huge escape, and I'm really grateful for that. Just the ability to, even when I'm feeling trapped physically or trapped in other ways, I always have access to my imagination, and I'm super grateful.
So because of the drummer thing, I want to go back to a little bit to the drummer thing and then get back to drama again.
Yeah.
So when you were a drummer, I mean, you are a drummer. I was directing a show. It was a one-man show about a drummer, and I was like, if you're ever a drummer, you're always a drummer.
Right.
You know, and it's not something you get over. So what kind of, like, so in your drumming, you were saying you're doing all state and all Southern and all of that stuff. Were you doing, you know, trap set? Were you doing marching band? Were you doing concert? Or was it all of them?
I did a little bit of a lot of things. In middle school, mainly was doing like concert percussion. So wind ensemble, orchestra, jazz band, straight percussion ensemble with just percussionists. Because we have like, you know, we're an entire group of different instruments. So there's like snare drum and bass drum and cymbals and mallets like marimba and xylophone and glockenspiel and chimes and, you know, wind chimes, and, you know, there are just so many different types of instruments. So through that, I kind of learned how to play a lot of different things, and then learned to drum set a little bit, but I wasn't super involved in like playing in a band of any kind. I was kind of more like in like a school band setting. Mm-hmm. And then in high school, it kind of divvied out into a few things. So I was in the jazz. I played vibraphone in the jazz band, and I also played quads in the marching band all 4 years.
Wow.
And then I was in the percussion ensembles, the indoor drum line, the parade band. I did field shows for the marching band, and like, you know, away games and home games for different sports. What else? And then
you went to a high school that had a marching band?
Yeah.
That is so cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I went to a big high school. We didn't have a marching band.
Yeah, I was actually there when we transitioned out of having a marching band. So my freshman year we had marching band, and then after that, they stopped having field shows, and I think reverted fund, because I don't know if you remember the pink slip era. I don't know if that's still happening, but there were pink slip, just meaning a lot of teachers were getting fired because of the funding and stuff. So that after my freshman year of high school, the funding went down significantly, and so they stopped doing marching band and then redistributed what was left to other music things. So even though there was an actual marching band where we had field shows, they still had indoor color guard and indoor drumline show. So instead of being on a field, you'd be in a gym, and you'd still do some kind of like, you know, formations and stuff. And then I also did marching band outside of school, like club marching band, but it's called drum corps. I'm not sure if you've heard of drum corps, but I marched with Pacific Crest, and in Pacific Crest, I played the vibraphone.
Nice.
Yeah, so I feel like I like to think of myself as like a well-rounded percussionist, but the one thing that I could definitely improve on is just drum set and improvisational playing. I feel like I'm pretty good at like reading a piece of music, but I still don't feel as comfortable even today just like picking up an instrument and someone's like, play something, and I'm like, do you have the music? Can I read the music first?
Yeah, I always wanted to be. I knew friends who were really good, and they were like, they were okay concert drummers, you know, like orchestra and stuff like that, but behind a drum set, they were just like all over the place and doing stuff, and I was like, I had a drum set, but I always felt like I'd be at home practicing. I was like, this is so loud. Yeah. And it's like, I got to be perfect.
Right.
And what's the thing? And so now one of my dreams is to be able to have enough space and money and time to get an electronic set, so I can sit there with my headset on, and then I don't have to worry about it being too loud, and I can really practice. Yeah. You know, it's still one of my dreams to be able to feel comfortable behind a drum set.
Yeah, I think if I had access to a studio or a kind of like a soundproof room, I would feel more comfortable, because that's what I loved about being a percussionist in school was that I could go somewhere else, like not be in my dorm or not be at home, but I could play as loud as I wanted to. Like break so many mallets just from like hitting the instrument really hard, but knowing that like I wasn't hurting the instrument. Like the fact that a marimba is made out of wood from a tree and that it can take a lot of contact and impact felt really good as a child to just get that out, you know, like whatever I was navigating, I would just take it out on like a song I was playing or like a solo or just like hitting the instrument really hard. I feel like it was a really controlled way to really siphon my chaoticness into something that felt productive and like good. I really love, I used to teach percussion and I loved seeing, you know, kids just like who have a lot of shit going on. Like I taught in East Palo Alto and, you know, a lot of those kids have a lot of shit going on, but like being able to control it through taking a pair of sticks and just hitting it. And I'd like break through, just break that. I used to love just breaking through a drum head. And I feel like people, for a while was like, I'm too afraid to break it because then I have to replace it and all this stuff. And my friends were just like, Gabby, this is like $4, just replace it, you know? Yeah. And so in marching band, just like breaking through a drum head and being like, wow, like I don't have to be afraid of my own strength and my own power and I can harness this. And there aren't a lot of places where kids are allowed to harness that kind of energy in a way that feels healthy and safe. So I'm super grateful for being a drummer and having that, knowing that like I can do that and that it's okay, you know?
Yeah. Yeah, and having that, like you were saying, being able to do it in class and in school and outdoors where you don't have to worry about the neighbors complaining.
Right.
You know? Since I live near the Panhandle in San Francisco, and there's a guy who, on Sundays, he moves his entire drum set out into the Panhandle. He puts down a rug, he puts down his set, and he just plays for like 3 hours. He practices. And there's traffic. There's all this stuff going on. You can barely hear him. Wow. And so he has that space. And it's like, oh. So, well, one day we'll have practice rooms at the very least. Hopefully. So you were saying, so in the summer, you ended up in this drama thing. Now, what was it that made you think, I'll try drama, as opposed to, say, visual arts or sculpting or something like that?
Well, I always wanted to. I remember in 5th grade, at my elementary school, they were offering like after school drama classes. And my mom was just like, I did not come to this country for you to be an actor. You're going to be a doctor, an engineer, a lawyer. Read your books, basically. And I was like, well, I want to be an actor. I just want to like play and like, I didn't even think I had those words, I want to be an actor, but I was just like, I want to play and this looks so fun, you know? So I remember always wanting to, and then getting to middle school and not being able to because my mom wanted me to be a musician. And then in 8th grade, when I finally had the opportunity to do 2 things, that was without a doubt the first thing I wanted to do. I was deciding between like choir and drama. I remember that, but I just remember like having friends within drama and knowing that like you could still do musicals and stuff. So I was like, this is a good best of both worlds since I can't do both, you know?
Yeah. So your mother was okay with you. She is like not acting, but she didn't want you to be a professional musician, I'm assuming. Yeah. She wanted you to be a doctor, a lawyer, or something like that.
Well, something that our school offered, I felt like a lot of folks who were in band were also really academically studious, and they did joint programming within the band. So I remember in 7th and 8th grade, like if you were a part of the wind ensemble, they also offered like PSAT classes.
Really? Huh.
Yeah. Even though you take that in high school, it was like a kind of like a way to reel parents in of like, yeah, we're doing this music thing, but also if you like let them stay after school for this, like an hour of the rehearsal is spent on PSAT tutoring and prep. Yeah. So.
Wow. So that's how they could justify it to the parents.
Right. It was a very the school district I went to and the schools I went to, like middle school onward, were very college focused, which I'm grateful for. But it also provided a lot of stress and anxiety and competitiveness. From like middle school. I'm like, can we not think about college yet? But I guess it was helpful because I started high school off with like a really direct mindset, I guess, about wanting to go to school. But I don't know. I have thoughts, but
yeah. Well, it is tough because there's having the parents, like we were saying, the parents who are super driven, and sometimes it's like, okay, so you were so driven, so passionate about trying to, make this new life, and then at the same time, the kids can be like, well, now that we've made it, can I do other stuff? It's like the people that I've talked to for the MimeCast, 3 of them so far, their parents are from other countries, and how their parents support them or don't support them or struggle with them being actors, or at what point did they accept it? At what point did they just say, oh, you look happy, so I guess that's okay? Or one guy, he said that it was just his father was like, you're never going to make money. And he showed him that he was actually making money. Not a huge amount of money, but some. And his father was like, oh, okay, then never mind. It's so hard to know where that point is going to be, and to get your parents to go, oh, okay. And you having both of your parents be doctors, both immigrants, both doctors. So yeah, did they want you to be a doctor specifically? Was that like the goal?
Yeah. That was, I think, the ultimate goal. And I don't know if you know this, but I did apply to medical school, and I did matriculate into UCSF, and I actually went into medical school right after doing the workshop.
Really?
I was in
workshop? Huh.
Yeah, I was in medical school. The last 2 weeks of the workshop, I had already started medical school.
I don't know if I remember that. No, I don't think I knew that. I knew you were going to school, but I didn't know it was that.
I think I said anything. I thought I told Kari, maybe. But I was really ashamed of being in medical school. I even then, I feel like I was fulfilling my dying mother's wish. She had already passed away, but I felt like I felt an allegiance to still at least try. But I lasted for maybe 3 minutes, a little bit longer than 3 minutes,
10 minutes.
I fulfilled a block. There are 2 blocks within a semester, so I did half a semester, and then I left. I knew I wanted to leave even before that, but I had to wait until October 2nd to formally withdraw, so I didn't lose any financial aid, because they'd given me a full ride plus a stipend to go there. Yeah. And I already bought a car and used it, so I didn't want to have to return the money. So I stayed and passed my test or whatever, and then as soon as October 2nd hit, I withdrew. But I'm glad I went. I'm glad that I don't have in the back of my head this should I have tried it, and what would that have been like? Should I have done it? I was oh, this is actually not for me. But I'm glad that I proved to myself that I am able to get into school, that I would have been able to do it if I wanted to. But right. I'm not creating value for myself right now, just for other people. And that's not a sustainable way to live for me,
Yeah. I mean, that's a really good point. Going ahead and going, the thing that you might feel like you're supposed to do, that you try it. But if you have the options and you have this other thing that you love, you can go, okay, I don't have to feel guilty about this because I did try it.
Yeah.
Okay, so now back to high school. So you're doing taking classes. Did you do plays in school? The school plays, or did you do other stuff?
Yeah, I did a lot of different things. I was a really overly booked high schooler. So I was still in band, as I mentioned before, with jazz band and marching band and all state, all Southern, and drum corps and all of that stuff. But outside of band stuff, I did track and field. I played volleyball. I did theater as well. I was involved in a few clubs and different organizations. Within theater, my first couple of years, I mainly just did the classes. So I took the classes, and then there was this festival we always submitted for every year, Fullerton Festival, I believe. A festival, so I did those competitions. But yeah, I didn't really do any full plays the first couple of years. And then I was just reading Facebook messages from high school from a friend who had just reached out to me, because our last message was from 2011. And I was like, oh, let me just look at these messages. I remember talking to her because I was cast as the lead in The Proposal by Neil Simon. And I had to choose between doing the proposal or being in marching band. And I was like so conflicted, didn't know what to do. And I ended up choosing marching band, and I was really sad about it. And like, I'm fine now. But I remember being so devastated that I turned this down. But then, yeah, so that was interesting. I was in Pitt a lot, so I played for like the musical. So I was in West Side Story. I was in Footloose. Bless you. That's my roommate. I mainly did Pitt, but I did a couple of plays, but it was kind of a combination of like being in Pitt and then doing shows and then doing theater competitions and then doing classes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So when you got out, so you get out of school, were you thinking? So when you got out of high school, were you like still like, okay, I want to go to college for medicine, for music, for drama? I'm not going to college. What happened?
It was an interesting decision-making process. When I was a senior in high school, I still was hoping that I could maybe do percussion for college stuff, and was being considered for Juilliard's program because my private teacher's friend was one of the percussion teachers at Juilliard, and he saw me play in something, and he really thought that I should like audition and submit, and was really confident in my abilities to get in and everything. So I was considering doing that, and a few teachers from Northwestern had come to visit our school and stuff. So I was like, or come to visit my teacher, who then came to visit us and whatnot. So I was strongly considering doing that, but also applied to schools on academic merit as well. And so when I got into Stanford, my mom kind of wanted me to scrap my other like avenues and wanted me to go to Stanford for like pre-medical studies and things like that. And so I ended up doing that. So I went to Stanford, and when I was there, I was still like trying to see like, okay, well, what type of percussion programs do they have?
Well, they have a famous marching band, so
famous for interesting reasons.
Yeah, famous for interesting reasons. Yeah.
Not for the musicianship. So I think I was actually pretty like taken aback. I didn't really do a lot of research before going into Stanford. Like I remember having this weird like I felt like I had made a mistake when I had gotten there, because everyone was just so happy to be there and was like so excited, and I was just like, this isn't where I wanted to go, but I'm happy I'm here, but I don't know what to think of all of this. And I actually considered transferring my first year. I remember like, I had talked to my best friend at the time who was there, and I was like looking at different schools and was like, maybe I should just drop out of school and like go somewhere else. And I didn't end up doing that, but I ended up finding other things I was interested in. But it was really devastating in that first year to like not have access to like the caliber of percussionists that I was used to. But Stanford had a really strong theater department and a really strong theater community. There was a lot of student theater. There weren't as many theater majors back then. There are a lot more now, but back then there were a lot of students who were involved in theater, and so I got involved. I probably did like 2 to 3 productions a year within theater. Oh. And maybe while I was there, did like 1 percussion thing, but like for the most part kind of fell off my percussion, which was really interesting because I was so about it as a high schooler, but it kind of switched like I could only really have one artistic outlet in college because I was also like a human biology, reproductive justice major, and was really involved and had multiple jobs. And so I felt like doing a few productions a year felt like a good medium. I had considered majoring or minoring in theater, but I ended up never fulfilling that because I didn't have a lot of space in my schedule. But extracurricularly, I did a lot of theater in college.
Wow.
Yeah.
So what now during all of this period was your mother was still in Southern California?
She was diagnosed with cancer my first year of school. So I spent a lot of time going back and forth to Southern California in my first and second year of college. And then she passed away at the end of my second year in May. But she was still in LA like that whole time.
So you were doing the big move back and forth a lot.
Yeah, like on the weekends and whenever I could, whenever I was free.
Was she still, until she'd gotten ill, was she still a doctor? I mean, was she still practicing at a hospital? Or private?
Right. In the last 5 years of her practicing, she had moved around a lot. So previously she was at a hospital setting, and then she moved to a correctional facility in Bakersfield, and so was like a primary care doctor within the prison system. And then after that, she tried to establish her own private practice in like the Rancho Mirage Palm Desert area. So that was the last thing she was doing before she got ill. But when she became ill, she stopped doing that, and then was just mainly focusing on her healing and things like that.
It's really hard, yeah, to know. Like, my mother passed away also from cancer in her mid-40s, and that struggle, that everybody has, the whole family, of how much, wanting to come together and do something for the person, to visit, to do all this stuff, but not knowing, it's like there's never enough in a way, and that you can do, because you can't make it better, and it can be really hard. And I know for some people that they struggle with the amount of time that they didn't spend with the person, feeling kind of guilty about it. It's like, should I have done more? Should I have, but there's nothing you can do, unfortunately. It's really tough. Did she ever get a chance to see you in any of your plays?
No, she didn't. Yeah, because when I was in high school doing stuff, she was always working, so she didn't really get to see me in anything. So like, not really in volleyball either. But there were some times with music stuff, like in middle school, I remember she was able to see me in a few things. But when I was in high school, she was working a lot. So theater, and also, as I said before, theater wasn't something she was like super gung-ho about. So I feel like that wasn't the thing that she would make an effort to take time off to see. But for the various band things I had, maybe like I think she came to like an all-state performance or an all-Southern performance that I had in high school. I think she came to that. But yeah, unfortunately, she didn't see me in anything that I did in college because she was already sick, and then she passed. And then most of my theater career has been since she's passed away. So, but I'm sure she's looking down on me now, able to see the things I've been up to. That's my hope.
Yeah, the main thing is that knowing that the person wants you to be happy.
Right.
And with all the other stuff, it's really about your parents really want you to be happy.
Right.
So sometimes it takes a lot of weird twists and turns. Well, I know, but so you did you graduate from Stanford?
I did.
Okay, so after you graduated, what were you thinking you were going to go off and do?
Well, I had studied reproductive justice while I was in school, and so I really wanted to explore that further. I'd been really interested in potentially becoming a doula, and so I was looking for different avenues to do that. And so I came across a job opportunity with AmeriCorps through their Health Corps program, where I would get to work in New York at a community health center for 11 months. And as a part of my fellowship, they would also train me to be a doula and to work within the clinic, but also to like assist folks who were patients at the clinic at home, or like in the hospital or wherever they chose to give birth. So that's what I did in my first year after school.
So you went to New York and trained there?
Yeah. Yeah.
So why did you come? Did you just feel more at home here? You just felt like coming back to San Francisco or the Bay Area?
Well, I had chosen, so at the same time when I was working as a doula, I also was applying to medical school. And so I was deciding between Columbia and UCSF and U Chicago. So I was like, either I stay in New York, move back to the Bay, or move to Chicago. And I wasn't really sure. And then Columbia and UCSF had similar like financial aid packages. So I was deciding between them. And then I just kind of spoke to a lot of people. And UCSF felt like the better fit for me. And so I had accepted UCSF, but then I was still not sure. And I was just like, I don't know. I guess this is what I actually want to do. I'm not really sure, but let me just defer. So I deferred UCSF. And so I was like, well, I could spend the year in New York when I'm deferring, or I could spend the year back in the Bay since I'm going to be at UCSF anyway. So it felt like a better thing to move back, just to like continue to build connections here, so I would have a community outside of medical school. My goal was to like not make medical school like everything, and so I should have just listened to myself then. But I'm happy things worked out the way that they did, because I feel like in that year I got to learn more about the respective communities that I wanted to be a part of here. So I was still doing doula work when I moved back to Oakland, but I also started volunteer ushering for different theaters, just so I could, because I was doing that in New York too. I didn't have time to do theater, but I still loved being a patron or an audience member of theater, but I didn't have money. So I was like, volunteer ushering is the way to go. So then I was a volunteer usher at, I think the first show I saw when I came back was a show at Ubuntu. I can't remember which one. I remember Lee Rondon Davis was a person who was coordinating volunteers. So I met Lee that day. I met Michael Moran. I met other folks, and then just started volunteer ushering at different theaters in the Bay Area. And then I remember I met Idris at Rotomi's Typecast show, because I was volunteer ushering. I was a usher for Brava. So I was ushering Typecast. And I had just never seen another like queer Nigerian actor ever, really. And the story was just so powerful, and it was so brilliant, and I was just like, I want to know both of these people. And so I was talking to Idris before the show, talked to Rotimi after the show, and both of them had said, like, do the workshop, like if you want to get more involved within like theater, and if you want to learn more about like, you know, how we've converged as like collaborators and artists, like do the workshop. That'd be a great thing to do. And so then the summer before I started medical school, I'd been in the Bay for like maybe 6 months or so, had met Rotimi in the springtime, applied for the workshop, did the workshop, and I was like, this will be a great little like, you know, thing to do before I start medical school. And it was great. I mean, part of it though planted or watered seeds that were already within me of like, is medical school the path I want to do? And I kind of felt like, no, it probably isn't that path. And I'm grateful to have had the Mime Troupe as a way to remind myself of how much I can't just like satisfy this craving by watching theater. I want to actually be a part of it and be able to be a theater maker, not just a theater watcher. And so, yeah, I was really, really grateful to have had the chance to work with folks who were also kind of like early level professional theater folks who were in school, folks who were outside of school, folks who were figuring things out. We were all just kind of figuring things out. And so it was helpful to have that. And it was kind of like a solidifier, like the nail in the coffin for me for medical school was like, my sister came to see the final show that we did, and so did my cousin who was visiting. And my cousin was at the time in medical school and now is in residency, but so she's a doctor now. But I remember talking to her about how much I just really did not like being in medical school, because I was in school towards the end. So I was just like, I don't like this, I'm not happy here. And there was that same feeling of like, everyone is so grateful and happy to be here, but I'm not. Like, I remember I had like left, I had left something Mime Troupe related. I think it was like I was like in the office, maybe just like getting lunch or something. And then I went to like my first day of medical school, and folks were going around, you know, introducing themselves. And someone was like, hi, I'm so happy to be here. This is literally a dream come true. I just can't believe I'm in medical school right now at UCSF. I've been dreaming about this for my entire life. And everyone was like, you know, comforting her and giving her a hug. Like, it's okay. Like, you're here now. Welcome. And I was just like, I do not feel that way at all. Get me the fuck out of here. Or get me out of here. I'm sorry. I don't know if this is curse friendly. But
that's fine.
Okay, cool. But I was just like, absolutely not. And so the metaphor I used to describe my med school experience is this metaphor of like a frog. Okay, when a chef takes a frog and puts that frog in a pot of boiling water, the frog jumps out because the frog knows that's not boiling water, like that's not safe. But if you put a live frog in a pot of water and turn the fire on, on low and like slowly boil that frog will boil themselves alive. And so that was me. I was the frog. Medical school was a pot of water that was like slowly on simmer, And so when she was like, this was the best decision I've ever made, and I'm so grateful to be here and all this stuff, I was just like, okay, that simmer started to like, I'm not supposed to be here right now, but let me just see what's up. Let me wait, And but yeah, and just being and not feeling that way when I was at the Mime Troupe, when I was like doing what I loved and what I'd always loved to do. I was like, why can't I make a career out of this? Clearly people at the Mime Troupe have. And so it just gave me examples of what theater professionals could look like, because folks from all walks of life come through the troupe. So it was really cool to have that as I was figuring out what I wanted to do,
Right. Sounds like just at that moment, just at the right time, we saved you.
You saved me!
From being boiled to death.
I'm gonna die. Can I grab my charger really quick?
Sure.
Okay, 1 second, sorry.
So anyway, you were at the Mime Troupe,
Mm-hmm.
And you did, doing the workshop, and then what happened after that? Did you like go out and start auditioning and getting to know more people, or what?
Yeah. Okay. Well, I did the Mime Troupe. That was over the summer, and then at some point in mid-July, I also started medical school. So like in the middle of Mime Troupe. And then Mime Troupe ended, and then medical school picked up, and then I left medical school, I want to say like October 2nd.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I had my first audition in November. Or no, maybe actually had my first audition. No, I remember I had my first audition while I was still in medical school. I was like, well, maybe I can be one of those med students who like does theater too. But
one of those. Like this is this huge group. Yeah.
Right. So I think I auditioned for Crowded Fire in September. So I was still in medical school. I auditioned for Crowded Fire. I re-met Mina because I had done a flash mob with Rami or something while I was maybe over the summer. So I'd kind of met Mina through that and had known about Crowded Fire. So I was on an email list where they posted this auditioned for Mina there. And then also Lisa Marie was in the room, who I had seen perform while I was a student at Stanford, because she came and did her solo show and stuff. So it was a nice like rekindling of like old connections. And then I left medical school, was figuring things out still, and then I was cast in a stage reading at Crowded Fire as a result of that audition that then happened in November. That was the November thing. But I was also navigating a lot. So earlier that year, January, so before the Mime Troupe, I was diagnosed as bipolar and was experiencing mania for the first time in January. And then was kind of becoming manic again around the end of my medical school tenure as I was leaving. And so I was hospitalized in October for mania at UCSF of all places.
Wow.
And then
there's teachers there to see you.
Right, exactly. And then Mina had heard about me being hospitalized and was so sweet because I had just accepted the stage reading thing. And so she called me in the hospital and was like, I want you to know I care about your well-being, and I just want you to know that, if you want to still do this show, you're welcome to, but just let us know. And like, we love you, we care about you, just, take care of yourself. And it was really beautiful to know that I could disclose that to her and that we could have that conversation. And I'll always be so grateful to her for many reasons, but that was one, that she did not stigmatize me being bipolar within theater, because that's a whole conversation. So anyways, got out of the hospital and then like went to rehearsal maybe a couple days later and then did the show, and it was great. and I met a bunch of people through doing that. And then I think someone told me to audition for TBAs maybe, but maybe I did that. But honestly, a lot of my first connections came from like word of mouth. So Mina put out a good word for me with the Bay Area Children's Theater. And then I did Inside Out and Back Again. That was written by Min Kang and directed by Mei Liang, another resident artist of Crowded Fire. And then I feel like after that, I just started auditioning a lot of places. I also found an audition for this amazing piece called They Them, written by Nick Mwaluko. And I did that through those women productions in the middle of doing the Bay Area Children's Theater run, which was like kind of a mess, but grateful that I kind of double booked myself a lot in the beginning of my professional career, but I learned now that that's not the best way to do things, but I was still learning. And I'm grateful.
It's one of those things when you're coming out of school and you're used to taking all of these different classes and doing all of this stuff. It's like, yeah, sure, I'm taking 21 units and I'm in band and I'm doing this. Right. Get off my back.
Yeah.
Then you get out to shows and it's like, it's really hard to do that.
Really hard. Yeah. It's kind of impossible. So I did that and I'm grateful that I was able to meet, other Black queer artists. Like I met Troy Rocket doing them. I met Jasmine Milan. I met so many people and I'm grateful. But yeah, I don't really know. I think the momentum has kind of started rolling after that. So Sage reading at Crowded Fire, Mina being super connected and recommending me to people, doing Bay Area Children's Theater, doing They Them. And then I feel like after that kind of just was like consistently in shows and have been ever since. So I kept auditioning, kept getting random emails from folks who had maybe heard about me and wanting me to audition for stuff. And then that kept happening. And then bigger theaters started reaching out to me. And I don't know, it was just kind of this whole thing, I don't know how.
Once you start getting a reputation and then people start going, well, let's see about this person.
Right.
Maybe, and the theaters, they have so many things. When a lot of times when actors audition for shows that they're trying out and they're thinking, oh, well, I'm trying to convince them to cast me or something. And it's really that when we're casting, directors or casting directors are looking for people that are the answer. We want the person who's going to solve all of our problems and make our life easier.
Yeah.
And so when somebody comes in or we hear about somebody there, if they're easy to work with, they do their job, the audiences like them, that solves a problem. And it's like, great. And there's a part that seems like the right fit. Great. Then as the director or casting person, I can then move on to another problem because this is handled by this actor.
Right.
So I was wondering, when you did Top Girls, were you studying at ACT or did you come in through an audition or did they just call you up?
I came in through an audition. So I was doing my second run of a show at Bay Area Children's Theater in May of that year, so last year. And then me and a castmate, Cassie, do you know Cassie Gurley? I don't know if you know.
Cassie Gurley, I've known Cassie Gurley since she was about 2 days old.
Aww.
Her father, I met him in the 7th grade.
Aww.
And I've known him ever since. We talk a couple of times a week.
That's precious. Well, I love Cassie, and we were both on a show together. And at one point, we were just like, we're going to audition for these EPAs. So we would leave our shows or whatever, in the afternoon because they were student matinees and stuff. And then we would look up the EPAs from Broadway World and just go to them. And we had this little tag team. I'd bring the throat coat and, she'd drive us or whatever. And so there was one day where the ACT EPA was happening. And we were prepared to, wait a long time, all the things that we've been doing. And we didn't wait too long. We just signed up, wait list. And then we both auditioned for Janet Foster. And I never heard anything, because I was May. And then randomly, Janet Foster calls me up in September, asking me to read for Angie for Top Girls. And I didn't know what to do because I'd already been cast in something at Crowded Fire. And this was the first time I'd ever been confronted with that type of dilemma. And I had gotten the call when I was at Dolores Park with a friend who was had just graduated from ACT. And she was like, Gabby, I at the very least, you should answer the call and like just go and audition. Like at least, you know, you have an opportunity to show this director from New York your work. And if it doesn't work out, then like you don't have to worry about it. And if it does work out, then, you know, you'll cross that bridge later and have that conversation with the people who need to be spoken to. And so I was like, okay. She was like, you don't turn down ACT. And I'm like, I guess. I don't know. So I ended up, it was like a 2-day turnaround. So it was like, yes. And she's like, great, can you come in tomorrow? Or can you come in like in 2 days? And I was like, sure. And so then it was an accent. And I didn't really have a British, like a English accent really, you know? But I just tried to look at the sides that she offered and do my best. And then I remember I auditioned for Janet and like the dramaturg, because Tamala, the director, was still in New York. And after my audition, they were like, great, can you wait outside for a second? And I was like, sure. And then they spoke amongst themselves. Then afterwards, Janet came outside and was just like, can you do a callback tomorrow? Are you available for a callback tomorrow? And I was like, oh, I can't do a callback tomorrow, but I can do Monday. Came back on Monday. They had Tamala on Skype. And so I did it for her. And then didn't hear back for maybe like a few days or a week or so. And then Janet called me and was like, we'd like to offer you the role of Angie. And I was like, wow, okay, well, let me get back to you real quick. And then I hit up Mina again, explained the situation, and she was really supportive. And you know, she was like, you know, this puts us in a bind, but obviously, like, as someone who loves and cares for you, I want you to choose what's best for you. And you know, this happens all the time, and I appreciate how you handled this. I appreciate your transparency. And, you know, I offered a list of people who were available to audition for the role. You know, I tried to make it, like, as, you know, amicable as possible, because I love Crowded Fire. I love Mina. I have so much respect and adoration for that project, and was really grateful I could at least be part of the workshop previously. And so I think it worked out. I speaking for myself, I don't know how it worked out. But, you know, they were able to recast it, and it was beautiful. It was fine. But yeah, it was my first dilemma of that nature, and it really stressed me out, but I'm glad it worked out for everybody. And so then, yeah, pretty quickly I started the show. So I know other folks who were casting that show in like the springtime. I don't know what happened on my end. I think, I don't know if they chose somebody else and that person dropped out, or if they were just having trouble casting the role. I'm not sure, but I know that they wanted the main family within Top Girls to be a family of color. And then once they cast Marlene and cast Joyce as Black women, they wanted to find a Black actor to play Angie. But it could have gone a number of different directions in terms of people of color, but that's kind of the avenue they went. And so they were struggling to find a local actor to play Angie. And so they called in a few people, but they were casting for Angie throughout the summer. So I feel like they were kind of like looking at like, well, who else do we know? Who else do we know? Who else do we know? Oh, this random person who did an EPA in May. Let's hit them up. And that was me. And so.
Oh, cool. Well, you did a great job. It was great to see you.
Oh, you saw it? You saw it?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. It was fun.
It was so much fun. He did, like I said, it's a hard show. It's a heartfelt show.
Yeah.
There's so much stuff, so much struggle, and especially with your character and her open honesty.
Yeah.
You know? So you did a great job.
Thank you. It was really challenging. It was my first time on an equity production, so doing the 6 days a week, 10 to 6 calls and all of that. And Tamala was just incredible, our director, and the cast was awesome. Everyone was just awesome. It was really, really cool. I had a little bit of trepidation going into doing a show at ACT just because of everything I'd heard through Stephen Fisher's, lawsuit and like from other students of color. But I think ACT is really compartmentalized. Like there's like the school and there's the conservatory, and then there's also like each individual production, which is so dependent on like who else is in the room with you. And so I thought everyone who was in the room with us was super great. And so I had a really great experience there. Cool.
And then now when the lockdown happened, you were doing another show, right?
Yes, I was.
You were just opening the show at Berkeley Rep?
Yes, I was.
So
that was interesting. Away Tempo is brilliant. I
worked with her. She directed me in Jazz.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like, last year this time.
Yes, I saw that. You were so great in that. Oh, your character makes me so uncomfortable. You did a great job.
Yeah, that's my job, to make people uncomfortable.
Yep.
Yeah, but she's great. She's a lot of fun to work with. So smart and so fast.
Yeah, so smart. I appreciated the amount of activity we did, and the amount of table work was unreal. I so appreciate when directors aren't, quick to get on our feet. Like, I really appreciated that we spent over a week, like, at the table talking through things, understanding what is fact about our play, what is truthful about our play, what questions we had. We each gave little history presentations on different things. So, like, I gave a presentation on, like, the hip life movement and, like, Ghanaian music, and other folks talked about the actual Edbury boarding school, or, the Miss Ghana pageant, like, over the years. And we each were assigned things on the first day, and then throughout the table work days, we each, 1 to 2 people.
Yeah, we did that on jazz too.
Right. That was so great. I appreciated that level of dramaturgy. Like, I wish I could have done that with so many things. There are just so many things I wanted to, like, take note of for when I, one day start directing things. I would love to be able to do so much of what Owoye brought to the table. And I actually had a really great conversation with her where she was like, I think I could definitely see you getting into directing, the way that you think about things, and the way the questions that you're asking aren't always specific to your character. You're always thinking about, like, is it humid, or how would the girls bow when, like, when headmistress walks in, and all this stuff. She just appreciated my questions, which is also really cool, because I ask a lot of questions just in general in life. I always have, and sometimes I feel like I'm asking too many, but she never made me feel that way, and was always available to answer the questions that I had, that we all had. And it was just such a life-changing experience for so many reasons. I mean, COVID being only one, but, like, that experience of, like, every day new information, not knowing if the show was going to open, not knowing if it was going to be taped, not knowing, what would happen, and, like, all the work we'd been putting in. We all worked so hard, and, we were devastated.
Yeah.
Devastated. Like, the first day when Joanna came in and told us, we are not, the first announcement was that we were going to be postponing the start of the show. So instead of opening March 26th, we would open April 5th, or so that we would still rehearse, but that we would open April 5th. And then, CDC released no public assembly for 8 weeks. And then I was like, okay, well, now we're going to do a taping. For the first day that you were supposed to have previews, will just be a taping. And then, the Bay Area counties announced shelter in place. I mean, there are other steps, but, like, that was, like, I remember that was announced Monday at 1 p.m. on Monday, April 16th or whatever, the day before St. Patrick's Day, thankfully, actually. They announced that. And so we had been planning on taping the show either that Thursday or maybe even that Tuesday.
I think it was Thursday, because I was supposed to come.
Right.
I was going to come. Paige had asked me. She's like, oh, it'd be great. And I was like, this is my one chance to see this.
Right.
And then I got a text from her, something that said, it's not going to be Thursday. It's going to be, like, Monday. Mm-hmm. It was like, can you come today? And I was like, I didn't have time. I was like, it'll take me too long to get there. I'd miss. They
gave us 2 hours notice to invite people to get ready. All of it. Like, it was impossible. Some folks who were nearby came, but it was mainly Berkeley staff who were in the audience in the mezzanine. I wonder, why we couldn't have done 2 runs that day so that they had 2 recordings, or, like,
It's probably an equity thing.
Probably.
It's like when the Alley was shooting my 1984, they had to do it in one take.
Yeah.
They got one shot at it. So
I just feel like it would have been great to have a second thing, but I also am grateful that there's some archival footage out there somewhere of the magic we created, because it was really magical. And I wish, it could have gone on longer online in terms of, like, the online run, but equity rules and all of that limited it to 2 weeks starting on March 26th, and then whatever that 2 weeks was. So, but as a result, my grandmother got to see me perform for the first time, like, in Nigeria, and, that was really cool.
That is cool.
Yeah, so there were a lot of silver linings to having it be online. I think it made it more accessible for folks who aren't able to make it out to the theater for a number of reasons. So that was a beautiful end result, given that there was a path that would have resulted in like no taping, no performance, no nothing. Like so many other theaters out here. You know, I know a bunch of friends who were in the middle of rehearsal processes or in the middle of tech whose shows were canceled with no taping, and people never got to perform the things they had been working on, you know, for that entire time. So I'm grateful that we had a semi-professional taping of the show, not just this like archival wide thing, but like zoom in and all this stuff. Like, it was beautiful. It was really beautiful.
Yeah, definitely stopped things. And because I had just started rehearsal, so we couldn't even run through we were like 1 week into doing ragtime. We didn't have enough to do anything.
Ragtime? Yeah.
So that sucked. So what now? I was reading something the other day, and they were talking about, you know, it's like, who knows when we're going to be able to go back to work as actors, because even when the lockdown ends, will the audiences show up? You know? There's that point where you work through your career, and you want to get to a point where you know what you're going to be doing for some months in advance. And it's always neat. You go, I know I'm doing this show, then I know I have this show, then I know I have this. I'm auditioning for that, all of that stuff, and that is all gone now. Anything you were auditioning for, anything that you already knew the director wanted you for, it's kind of scary. Though, ironically enough, it would have been a good time to be a doctor. Sorry, I had to bring that up.
No, don't be sorry. I'm really grateful for the folks who are on the front lines. You know, it's a really unprecedented moment, and I have a lot of friends who are doctors or who are in medical school, and I'm grateful for all of them for going into this field, because there's so much happening right now in the world. Folks, like, do you know Polly? She's an actor and also an epidemiologist, and she works with the San Francisco Department of Health and has been like sharing things on her Facebook about, like, back when like folks weren't wearing masks. She was like, please, I know the CDC hasn't released wearing masks yet, but like cover your face and all this stuff. And now she's trying to get folks who have been displaced and folks who are homeless into hotels and into other places so that they can actually, you know, abide by shelter in place versus being policed by police people who are criminalizing them for things that they don't have access to. So she's really great, and I thought that was a beautiful merging of the art and medical field. Good old doctors.
Well, it's been it's really nice talking to you and getting a chance to know you better. So much stuff I didn't know, and like I said, a lot of the people who will watch the MimeCast, well, those people who watch the MimeCast, they'll go, oh my goodness, I had no idea that you were almost a doctor and that you were a drummer and that, you know, all of these different things.
Right.
So is there anything else you'd like to mention before we sign off?
I hope everyone who is watching this and folks who aren't able to watch this are able to just take care of themselves during this time, to be gentle with yourself, to kind of devalue productivity and value self-care, and be gentle and tender in the ways that you need, and hydrate, eat, wash your hands, shower.
Wash your hands a lot.
A lot.
Did you see that article that Valina wrote for TBA about the pressure that people feel to be productive? Because you were saying, you know, to let go of that it's not even like, there are people who are like wanting to be super productive. That's the way they are. And there are other people who are like reflecting and doing other things, you know, that they feel right with. But apparently there's some kind of like, it's almost like bullying. People are feeling guilty.
Right.
Or they feel like they're being made to feel guilty for not being productive enough.
Right.
And that's messed up.
Right.
You know, it's an interesting article. We have to be kinder to ourselves and to others. Everybody's dealing with the issue of really grief, is what also Dean is talking about. There is a grief that we have for the time for the way our lives were before.
Yeah.
Especially in the arts, but in general. And how do we deal with that is going to be different for everybody.
Right.
But we have to be kind to each other, knowing that everybody else is suffering from the same sort of grief.
Right.
But anyway, well, I want to thank you very much for being here, and stay safe, stay inside, except for when you're going out for your walks. And I will talk to you later on.
All right, talk to you later. Much love, Michael.
You too. Bye-bye, Gabriella.
Bye.
Bye.